Well, this week's video message is quite intense, so I think I'm going to start out with the lighter stuff and then just kind of build my way up towards the end of the video. So stick around because there is a lot. So before we get into the message of this week's video, I just wanted to start, like I always do, going over some of the things that have come in since the last video message, just some updates. The first thing that I put in my notes that I just think is so awesome and significant is the fact that I realized that President Nelson is going to turn 100 in the year 2024. Now remember, 2024 is a big year. That's the year that the second eclipse crosses over North America and creates that X marks the spot. It's something we've been talking about in a lot of these videos throughout the last couple of years. And I believe it's just going to be a significant year for so many things on so many levels. And what I've been feeling is that after 2024, life will never be the same. It's going to be very different. So just realizing that President Nelson will turn 100, I thought that's significant in itself. He would be the oldest prophet ever to head the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And we did talk about in a past video, I'll have the link to it down below if I can find it, but someone who had attended a conference, and I believe it was Elder Holland who came and spoke. And after I shared that video, so many people who live in that area wrote into me confirming that that was legit. He made mention of that the current presidency was preparing to hand over the church to Jesus Christ himself. They were getting ready to make that transition, that's the point we're sort of at on the timeline. And so it certainly makes sense with all the changes that have been happening. We can see that things are happening to line it up. So anyways, I just was thinking about it and I thought, well, that'll be interesting to see if he still is president of the church in the year 2024, just based off of my own feeling, just judging by his health, how he truly always looks as though he's getting younger. I know his wife has said that about him. I certainly can't imagine him not being here in the year 2024. But what a significant year for him and for America. So it'll be exciting to see what happens, but I just had to point that out. Now in the last video message, I talked a lot about the word of wisdom and I talked about meat and kind of some of the false beliefs and myths that have been spoken of in the scriptures. And it was so funny because after publishing that video, not even just a couple hours after it was on YouTube, I went on to, I think it was Fox News, and I saw this headline that said, "Poacher out of business. Man hit with 12-year ban from hunting and fishing for wasting bear meat." And I guess he had done this countless times where he would just hunt for sport, get these animals, and he would leave behind all the meat and waste it. So he was just killing for the sake of killing. And it was so interesting that I had just talked about it, and here it was in the news. I took this as a confirmation and a witness of the importance of that message. All right, real quick, I just want to share some of the screenshots and images I've seen this week of numbers and messages manifesting. This first one here is a screenshot I took of a high school reunion video that I made for our class and put it on YouTube. And this day that I looked at it, I noticed 111 and the word union. Again, I've talked about a lot how the number 111 represents unity. And it was another reminder that in this 11th hour, we are to be united. Then as I clicked out of it, there was the number 113, another manifestation. Pay attention. This is what we need to be doing in this 11th hour as 311 workers. It's also been an interesting week in weather. And here's some patterns I've noticed. This is an image of Washington, D.C. It rained so much that it flooded and commuters were standing on top of their cars. They were trapped. And speaking of Washington, in the Washington Post, just prior to this incident, there was a freak summer hailstorm that buried a Mexican city under 5 feet of ice. Something definitely is happening in the spiritual. I noticed this in my feed and the number 113. Pay attention. This is about a prophetic word about the end time by the famous Bob Jones. And 411 represents information. It's the number we used to dial when we wanted information. Here it is, manifested on this Hank Kuhneman prophecy about the year 2020. Now, I talked about Hank's video in my last video message, and with this number, I'm hearing important information. Pay attention. I saw this today posted on Twitter about scientists teleporting an object from Earth into space. And as I got reading about this, I realized this article that was tweeted was from 2 years ago. If science has been using teleportation since 2017, it had me wondering where we're at on the timeline today. And since the last video message, there's been the infamous headline of billionaire Jeffrey Epstein being indicted on so many charges. Now remember, last year I talked about this year, 2019, how this would be the year when lots of wolves in sheep's clothing will be brought into the light, and we can see that this is happening. Now with this particular case, as some of you have mentioned and reached out to me and shared this is going to expose so many other wolves in sheep's clothing that are linked to Jeffrey Epstein. And so this case has just been breaking out so much information. It's really taken us down an interesting rabbit hole, and we just see more and more dark secrets coming into the light, and justice is about to be served. Okay, something else that sort of came through the feed since the last video message, someone posted in one of our groups an article on the church website that quoted Elder Cook. It just says, Elder Cook explained that over a 4-year period, every single stake and ward, district and branch in the church has a member of the 12 coming and meeting with its leaders and training them on prophetic priorities. I'm feeling that. Definitely feeling that. So that's a priority for the First Presidency and for the 12 apostles to between now and the next 4 years. So that would be between now and 2024 that a member of the 12 apostles will have visited every stake throughout the world, training them on prophetic priorities, training them on how to prophesy over their people, over their stake, over who they have stewardship over. And it sort of reminds me of when the prophet spoke to the brethren not that long ago and gently sort of reprimanded them, reminded them of the power of the priesthood and how they really need to be using that priesthood at a higher level, way more than they currently are. And so that's what this reminded me of using that prophetic mantle over the people that they have stewardship over to guide them through these very, very, very last hours. I want to say hours now instead of days, because it really feels like we're down to the hours now. So of course that caught my attention. I had to share that. That is very significant and just gives us an idea as to where we're headed. All right, and of course, I know many of you out there also have the earthquake app on your phones. And my earthquake app, you know, I've had to put it on silent. I've had to put my phone on silent every night when I go to bed because it's been going off just about every night. And it's crazy because we're getting to that point where we're getting used to it. So it's no longer alarming. It's no longer grabbing our attention because it's happening all the time. We're getting these earthquakes all over the world that are greater than a 5.0. A lot of them greater than a 6.0. And there's a lot of activity going on right now in the Ring of Fire area on the globe. And so we can see that things are changing, things are moving, things are shifting. We had the California earthquake that happened on July 4th. Yes, that is significant, and yes, we're going to talk about it later in this video. But I just want to remind everyone and point out for those of you who weren't aware of the time that this earthquake occurred. It occurred at 11:33 a.m. There again is that number 113. Pay attention. Later, I saw this article that talked about the second earthquake that came through, and it caught my attention because it said that this earthquake released 11 times more energy than the earthquake on Thursday. So that number stood out to me. As you all know, this is the 11th hour. And real quick, I just want to add to that, the day before that earthquake, I was just talking to my family about the homelessness problem and the third world conditions that are happening right now in downtown LA and how it's just getting so crazy. There was those reports of the bubonic plague, the Black Plague that we haven't really seen since medieval times, right? In fact, while editing this video, I noticed this headline today that says Los Angeles, California cities overrun by rodents that pose public health epidemic, according to a study. It said that right behind Chicago, LA is the second city in the United States to have the biggest population of rat infestation. And I think there's a lot to be said about that. Remember, the physical is a manifestation of what's taking place in the spiritual. I think that these bigger cities are literally being overrun by rats. There have been confirmed cases of typhoid fever. There was a police officer that had been infected, so they had sort of quarantined the police officers from that part of LA because it's so dangerous. Anyways, I've got some articles and videos about that down below if you want to check it out, but it's crazy. So I was talking about that with my family, and then the very next day there's the earthquake. All right, and speaking of the 4th of July, I wanted to bring something up. Someone wrote into me. I'm just going to go ahead and read her email to you and then read my response. She had messaged me just a couple days before the 4th, and she wanted to share a dream that she had with me, which had to do with America being attacked by terrorists. She said the dream was so vivid that she remembers the smells, conversations, items of clothing, very detailed images. She woke up to write it down at about 2 o'clock in the morning, and she said, I just remember it was a warning that freedom and life as we know it could end in an instant. I was pondering if this was a literal attack or spiritual or both. I even had the thought to talk to you about it. She said, but I didn't want to bother you. Then tonight we went to a parade. I had the thought that what if there is something big that happens tomorrow on Independence Day? Then when I got home, I got to that part in your video of the prophecy you mentioned of something that would happen on Independence Day. And she went on to say, it'll be interesting to see what plays out tomorrow. Then on July 5th, she wrote me and said, to my knowledge, nothing happened yesterday. I am so relieved, but now I am confused that I misinterpreted my dreams and thoughts. What do you think? So here's my response. Oh, I don't think you were confused at all. I've been talking with my mom about this today. Yesterday was filled with crazy attacks from the adversary and messages from the Lord. Did you notice it too? First, there was the big earthquake in Southern California. Then all the lightning deaths in different states. I don't know if some of you had the chance to see some of those news articles about all the crazy lightning strikes. So many people were struck by lightning in the United States, and there were some deaths. I'll have some links to that down below if I can find them. There were storms and rain all over the country. We had 60-mile-per-hour winds in Layton. Then we had a freak accident with our house. Yes, we did. Our bathtub water suddenly wouldn't turn off, and it gushed for a whole hour. Our neighbors couldn't figure it out either. We finally called a plumber, and he said it was an odd freak thing. Before he came over, we shut off our water main, and we thought we might have to go the whole day without water. I thought maybe it was to give us practice for future times. Then I saw in the news today that 200 homes in Layton yesterday were without water. But this had nothing to do with our home or neighborhood. It was such an interesting coincidence. My mom told me that she woke up early yesterday and did spiritual warfare prayers for the whole country. I did the same thing. I found out many others had done the same thing as well. I read in the news today that terror attacks were expected yesterday, and many were surprised that nothing happened. I believe that we were shown what might happen if we didn't step up our prayers yesterday. I truly believe that our prayers were heard, and that's why God showed us the plans of the enemy, so we could engage in the battle and thwart his plans. The news reported that major clashes and attacks were expected at the National Mall, where the president spoke, and though the antagonist groups tried, no one would engage with them. They said it was a miracle. So yeah, there were all kinds of crazy things that happened that day, and you could even just feel it in the weather. I mean, with Mother Nature. Wasn't that a crazy 4th of July? Here where I live, it started out hot, and then the storms came in and the wind blew and it was raining like crazy, and then it just happened on and off all throughout the day. But it definitely felt like spiritual warfare, like a spiritual battle taking place all around. And as I've always said before, things that happen in the physical are a manifestation of what's taking place in the spiritual. And there were definitely lots of things happening in the physical on July 4th. And I just wanted to add real quick and point out that when that incident happened with our bathtub, we were watching a Netflix series because it was raining and storming, so we decided to put on a movie. My husband turned it on, and we watch everything through VidAngel, so it filters out everything. And for some reason, when we got about 5 minutes into this show, we realized that the filters were not working. And this is a show that my husband really wanted to watch. He'd been looking forward to it forever. So none of the filters were working. And so he kept stopping it and trying it again and trying it again. And I kept hearing words I didn't want to hear. I didn't want the kids to hear, and it was starting to bother me. So my daughter suggested, Dad, just turn it off. Start everything back up again, and I bet it will work. But he didn't listen to her. He kept trying to mess around with the filters, and we kept getting the same results. Finally, he listened to her, and it worked. But up until that point, we kept hearing the things we didn't want to hear coming through the TV, which is why I really don't like TV. If it were up to me, if I lived alone on my own island, I would be perfectly happy without any TV or movies. I love to read. I would just be reading and pondering and studying and just feeding my spirit. That's absolutely what I love to do. Anyways, when this happened, I said to my kids and my husband, I said, I really feel like this probably opened up a portal through the TV, and we can probably expect some attacks. And I said that out of frustration. And not even a minute after I said that, my daughter came running out of the bathroom screaming, Mom, Dad, oh my gosh, we thought someone was injured. And she said, Mom, Dad, the bathtub won't turn off. It's on full blast, but it shows that it's shut off, but it's on full blast. And my husband ran over, he couldn't turn it off. We messed with it forever. Like I said, the neighbors came over, they couldn't figure it out. And so we had to call and have a plumber come over. But he said it was a freak thing, that's something he never sees, which to me was a witness of what I said to my family. You know, when you give the enemy just a little bit of a breach, if you give him just a little bit of an inch, he'll take a whole mile. You have to be so careful. And that was another reminder and a witness that we have to always be on our guard. We can't let our shield down just for a moment. And if things like that happen, it's so important to immediately drop to your knees, immediately raise your hand, and bless your home. Repent if you did something and invited it in, but don't wait for things to happen. Don't wait for the enemy to manifest in your life, in your home, and in your family. Don't wait for it. When you realize your shield has been breached, deal with it immediately. So I just had to share that with you. Okay, so before we get to the heavier stuff, I want to share a really positive experience that I had with my family on the 4th of July. In fact, it was so awesome what happened to us. I felt like I was on cloud 9 all day. So I know when the enemy had that moment to come into our home, when we had that breach in our shield, he took it. He was not happy with us. So I just want to share this with you because it really made my day, and it has so much to do with what I shared in the last video message of how we're to knit our hearts together, serve our fellow man, and really cultivate that love and Zion-like society. All right, so I'm going to start by saying 4th of July was a crazy stressful morning, getting out the door, trying to get to our parade. You know, we had to park so far away because there was so much traffic. So we had to park pretty far away from where our spot was. Then we had to walk in the heat to our spot. So everybody was a little bit stressed out and a little bit ornery, right? And on the way there, as we were walking towards our spot, in that moment, during that time, I thought to myself, you know what? I can stop right now and turn everything around. This doesn't have to be a stressful event or a stressful morning. In fact, right now, I'm going to pay attention to anyone around me who I can serve, and I'm just going to start serving people. and just sort of go from there. Because the quickest way to pull yourself out of a bad mood or feeling stressed or anxious or whatnot is to forget about yourself for a moment and serve someone. It's so simple, and it works for me every time. So that morning, it's a tradition for us to do face painting the morning on the 4th of July. Before we go to our parades, we face paint. And so I always paint like a little flag or a firework on each of my kids' faces. Well, I was doing glitter tattoos and I was doing glitter fireworks on their cheek, but we ran out of time and I didn't have time to finish Tatum's face. So I told him, you know what, it's okay, I'll just pack it. We'll bring it there. I'll do it while we're waiting for the parade to start. So he thought, okay, that's a good idea. So that's what we did. And on our way to our spot, I thought, you know what? We usually sit there for a while before the parade starts. If I get done with Tatum's face, I'm gonna look around and see if there's any other children nearby who might want their faces painted too. So we go to our spot. Sure enough, I look over and I'm sitting next to a family and I see 4 young children sitting on the curb. So I thought, okay, perfect. So I paint his cheek and they're watching what I'm doing. They're watching me do it. And right when I get done, I dust it off. I see that the parade still has not started. So I turned to the family next to me and I said, do they want their faces done as well? Because I'd be happy to do it. And it was the grandmother. She said, oh, are you sure? I said, of course. She said, they would love that. Thank you so much. So she sent him over and they lined up, but I didn't realize how big their family was. They were there with other families, and so other kids came over. So we had a little bit of a line going. And so I did my best to get them all done, and the parents came over. They were taking pictures. They thought it was so awesome. You could tell that it made the kids' day. They were so happy to get these glitter tattoos. It was a complete surprise for them, and it just made everything so much more fun. So when we were finished, you know, they kept thanking me. That was so nice of you. You seriously are the nicest person ever. Thank you so much. And I could feel how it had already pulled me out of that stressful mood. It had already pulled me out of it. I was just feeling so relaxed, so happy, and so grateful. Well, as the parade finally started, we're sitting there watching it, and all of a sudden I look over and I notice behind us, just down the sidewalk, there's a man sitting all by himself. He's sitting all alone. And when I first noticed him, I thought maybe he was waiting for friends or family to come. But then I quickly realized, nope, he was there alone. And he was all decked out in jazz gear. In fact, at first, I thought he might be a retired NBA player. Maybe someone who used to play for the Jazz, because he was so tall and he was decked out in jazz paraphernalia, the hat, the jersey, all of it. He had a big umbrella. He had lots of things with him. And so as I started to observe him, I thought, okay, I'm gonna walk over and I'm gonna invite him to come sit with us. You see, because we had invited some neighbors to come join us for the parade and we had saved extra space for them. But at the last second, they called us and said they weren't gonna be able to make it. And in my mind, I heard everything happens for a reason. So now we had this extra space to invite this man over. So I walk over to him and I said, hey, would you like to come join my family and sit with us during the parade? We have a front row spot. We had some friends that counseled on us, so we have plenty of room. Do you want to come join us? And he just got a big smile on his face and he said, I would love that. So I noticed he had a cane. He appeared to be physically disabled, so I took his chair and his umbrella. I gathered all of his items and I said, I'll just carry this for you. I walked over to our spot. I set it all down and he came and sat and he was so happy. And we talked to him throughout the parade, and the woman, the grandma sitting next to me, leaned over and said, oh my goodness, I was just thinking to do the exact same thing, but you did it first. And she said, that is so awesome. So you could tell that this family next to me was catching on, and they were just so happy. The happiness meter was just going higher and higher. And so she was leaning in and having a conversation with him, and I was having a conversation with him, so he was getting it from both sides. And that's when I started to realize he was blind. You could tell as I paid attention to his eyes. They sort of had that milky color over the top of them. And he said, yeah, I am blind, but he could see somewhat because he could see the floats coming and he made comments about them. So he's partially blind. He did say he was disabled and he had participated before in the Special Olympics, and we got talking all about his life, and he just kept saying, I'm new to this area, I just moved here, and we just got talking about lots of things. And all of a sudden I started to feel like maybe, just maybe, from experiences I've had in the past where this has happened, I always feel like later in hindsight that it was an angel I had in my presence. And so I thought, I have to ask him his name. Just what if he is an angel giving me this opportunity to serve him? So I thought, okay, if I ask him his name and it happens to be some biblical archangel name like Michael, Gabriel, right? Then I'm gonna know, I'm gonna go crazy. So I just leaned over and I said, hey, by the way, what's your name? And he said, it's Michael. Of course, right? Of course it's Michael. So anyways, I just thought that was awesome. And you know, the parade continued. We had a great time. He was laughing with all of our kids and we got talking, and afterwards I just said, you know what, how about I get your phone number? And he had mentioned how he has a bunch of Hot Wheels and my son loves Hot Wheels, and I said, well, maybe we could do some kind of trade, and that got him excited. He said, yeah, I'd like that. So we exchanged numbers and we've been texting just about every day since the 4th of July. Every day I wake up, it says, good morning, Lindsay and family, and just really sweet, really nice. From what I gathered from talking to him, he said he does get lonely and could use some friends. So as the parade was over, he had all these things he got from the parade and things he caught, and so we looked around and gathered up some bags and collected bags from people sitting nearby and put, you know, we had got him water, so we put water and treats and all kinds of things in this bag and gave it to him. And the woman next to me came over again and she said, you know, you are just the nicest person I've ever seen. She said, I just feel so inspired just from watching everything you and your family have done today. It just has really inspired me and my family. I just want to thank you. And so the reason I share that is because it was a testimony to my kids. It was a witness to my kids that when you do kind things for other people, it's sort of this domino effect, right? Other people will notice too, and they'll catch on, and then they pay it forward, and it just spreads out from there. And these are just little things. You see, sometimes we think in order to give in big ways, to make a big impact or a big difference in our community, is we have to donate large amounts of money, or we have to do huge projects that really stand out in the community that people will really be affected by and really notice. But that's not true at all, you guys. It's just the smallest, simplest things. Inviting someone to come sit by you, smiling at someone, opening a door for someone, complimenting someone. All these little things don't cost a penny, and they're so easy to do. It just opens up the door for so many more opportunities, and it just really spreads like wildfire, and it's awesome. So the story doesn't stop there. So after that, I even noticed my husband catching on to this, and as he started catching frisbees and soccer balls and all kinds of treats, he noticed that behind us there were rows of other families kind of going into the parking lot. And of course they were on the front row of the street, so they were able to catch most of the candy. So when he'd catch it, instead of being selfish and just thinking about our kids and our family and, you know, whoa, this is our territory, nobody go beyond these lines, right? If the candy falls here, it belongs to us, right? He wasn't doing any of that. He was catching it, and then he'd run and jump over the bush behind us and give it to all the kids and families behind us. It was so fun for him to do that, and it was fun to watch him do that. It was good for our kids to see that. So anyways, it just kept going. It's like this momentum continued to build. Each kind little act and kind little deed led to more and more and more. So after that, after the parade was over, we decided to walk back to the car. And we put all of our things in the car, and then we walked over to where the food trucks were and where all the booths are. And we decided we would just get a little treat. We weren't really hungry, but it's a tradition that we always stop by the food trucks and we get a little something. So my husband said, hey, that butterbeer truck, it's like a giant root beer float if you've ever seen it. We only see it once a year, usually on the 4th of July, but it's called, I think, butterbeer mug or butterbeer float or just something like that. And it's the shape of a giant mug, like a root beer float, on wheels. And so a couple years ago, we came across this track at one of the 4th of July parades, and I got a punch card. Well, I only use it on the 4th of July when they come to town. So I've had it in my wallet for a couple years. So as I was paying for it, I heard in my mind, oh yeah, you have a punch card, go find it. So I said to the lady, oh, I think I have a punch card, but it's been a while, so hold on. And you know, there was a line behind us, and she said, well, it's okay, you can try to find it later and come back and I'll still honor it. And I said, no, it's okay, I got it right here, I know I do. So I hurried and I thumbed through my cards, and there it was. I couldn't believe how fast I found it. It's like it was meant to be. So I handed it to her, and we got 6 floats. We got 6 floats, so she stamped it 6 times, and I saw we were 2 floats away from a free float. And the natural man, right, the natural me, the worldly me, said to myself, it's like I heard a voice say, cool, you could hang on to this until next summer when they come back and get a free float next summer, or you could do something different and hand it to someone else and they could get a free float today. And I thought, oh my gosh, of course, that's a great idea. So I turn around and I look behind me, and there's a family standing right behind me. There's no one behind them, it's just this family. And so I walked up to the husband and wife and I said, hey, you guys, would you like to get a free float? And they looked at me and said, yeah, are you serious? Are you sure? I said, yeah, I'm not gonna use this till next summer, and it's 2 floats away from getting a free float, and I see there's 4 of you, so you'll get a free float. And they said, oh my gosh, that is so nice of you. You didn't have to do that, but that is so awesome, thank you. So I handed it to him, and I walked away and waited on the other side to get our floats. So as I was waiting for our floats, they didn't see me standing there, and I heard the mother bend over and whisper to her son. He looked about 13 years old, and she said, you see, honey, because we did something nice to someone earlier today, God has blessed us. She said, when you do nice things for other people, it comes back to you later. This is God blessing us. She said, see, I told you. And I thought, oh my gosh, that is so cool. I really felt like the Lord was able to use me in that moment to be a witness to a mother and her son about a principle she was trying to teach him. And you know, we've heard it called many things, what comes around goes around, good karma, right? But what she was trying to say is, don't think about yourself in the moment. Just give, bless others, serve, and it will all work out. You'll be happier for doing so, and God will take care of you. So I thought that was pretty awesome. It was so neat. And so we enjoyed our floats. I shared that experience with my kids, and we decided to finish walking around, checking out the booths, and then we'd head back to our car. So as we were making our way around the booths, I stopped at this cute little tent that had all these cute little fun trinkets, and I let my kids pick out some things. And my husband and my oldest son went and stood under a tree, and they waited for us. And when we came out, my husband said, oh my gosh, this lady just walked up to me and gave us all these tickets. And she said, here, you guys can have these. And he said, that was so nice. And I said, yeah, because the tickets are not cheap. But we weren't going to stick around and ride rides because that storm was coming in, so we were going to take off. But he said, kids, how about we look around for a family that looks like they could use these tickets? And the kids said, yeah, that's a great idea, Dad. So we followed him around, we walked around, and all of a sudden we came across a mom and her daughter, and they were just standing there, just staring at all the rides, but they weren't in line. They weren't getting in line. They were just standing there sort of longing. Like they had this look on their face of longing to go on the rides. And so we walked up to them and said, hey, could you use these tickets? We don't need them. And the mom said, are you sure? Are you sure? And we said, of course, yeah. And she said, oh my gosh, that is so nice. And the one thing I forgot to say, the one thing that she said, the family by the food truck said, and our friend Michael said, the one thing we kept hearing over and over and over, and the family that we sat by, they all said the same thing. You made our day. You just made our day. I thought that was really cool that that was sort of the theme. You just made our day. So in essence, what they're saying is that simple thing you did, that simple act of kindness just made our day even better. All right, so I wanted to add to that, just the week before, I had taken my kids out to Heritage Days in Syracuse. Every year they do a big carnival, and we usually go to that, and the kids ride the rides, and we get treats. And so we had purchased tickets, the kids had done all the rides, we were good to go, and as we were walking around getting ready to leave, a whole bunch of tickets just blew across our path, just came right over the grass, just a whole bunch of tickets. So we started picking them up, and one of my kids said, "Mom, oh my gosh, these are probably for us. We're getting blessed with more tickets." And I said, well, it could be, but it also might be God giving us an opportunity to serve someone, to serve one of his children, because we've already been on a ton of rides, so I don't think we need to go on anymore. So they agreed and said, yeah, let's give these tickets away. So we did the same thing just a week before. So my kids were already on board, and we'd walked around until we found a man with his 2 young sons, and they just had a couple of tickets, and you could tell he was trying to figure out how to make this work because every ride had a minimum of 3 tickets, and he just had a couple of tickets and 2 little boys. And so we walked up and we said, do you want these tickets? We're leaving and we're not going to use them. And he said, are you sure? Are you serious? And we said, of course. And he said, oh, thank you. That's so nice. You made our day. And so there it was again. And so anyways, I just noticed that was a theme for that whole week, was just looking for the small and simple ways that we can uplift someone else and brighten their day. And when we do that, they pay it forward. And it's so cool to see it happen. In fact, I watched the family that was sitting by us, I watched them serving the people around them, and you could just see it spread. It was so awesome. But that is how we begin to build a Zion-like society. That's how we begin to knit hearts together. We first have to love one another, and the best way to love someone, especially someone you don't even know, a complete stranger, is to simply serve them. So anyways, I just wanted to share that with you. I'd love to hear if you've been having similar experiences in your life this week. I'd love to hear, so please share with me. Oh, and I just have to add that the following Sunday was a fast Sunday, and I wasn't planning on getting up to bear my testimony. It didn't even cross my mind. I was just sitting there ready to just soak in and enjoy all the other testimonies. But after the second testimony in a row of talking about how we need to serve other people, and that's the best way to show love, and we need to look for the little ways to uplift people and love them and serve them, and how we need to start recognizing how God shows his love to us in our lives, and how we can also help others feel God's love. And after I heard that back-to-back 2 testimonies in a row, I thought, okay, all right, I gotta get up and share. So I got up and I shared these experiences real briefly in our fast and testimony meeting, and it was awesome just to add my experience as a third witness to my ward and my community. Anyways, I could feel that it was definitely a message that the Lord had for all of us. So now I'm ready to get into the heavier part of the video. And before I do that, speaking of that fast Sunday, so 2 of those testimonies that went before me, the first was the bishop and the second was my neighbor. Some things that our bishop bore testimony of really stood out to me and have so much to do with this week's video message. And I love how the Lord does that. He always times everything just right. So as I heard his testimony, it was another witness of what I was getting ready to share in this week's video message. Not to go into detail, I just wanted to sum it up. I remember when he was bearing his testimony thinking and feeling there's something different about him, something different about his demeanor, his voice, his tone. It just really stood out to me how different he sounded and how different he looked, and his mannerisms and everything were so different. And so I even leaned over and said to my husband, do you sense something different? His voice, his mannerisms, maybe it's the tone of the message he's sharing. There's something different. And he said, no, I don't notice anything, of course. But I did. I noticed something different. So for me, that was sort of a pay attention, pay attention. And he started to talk about, you know, we are living in the last days. We are living during the prophesied times throughout the scriptures. These are those days. And he says, look at the news, turn on the TV. I mean, you'll see it. It's so clear that we are living in those days. And he went on to talk more about that. And that was the first time I had heard him talk about this. And I know I'm in primary, so I don't always get to hear the adults speak and have discussions in Sunday school and whatnot. And sometimes I'm a few minutes late to sacrament, so I miss the announcements. But to my knowledge, this was the first time he was really talking about that subject. And so to me, it was another pay attention, pay attention. And it was almost as though he knew something, whether he had a dream or a personal revelation or vision, or another leader from the church had shared some things with him. But it was this feeling that he knew something. You could tell it was just so important that he drove that message across, that we need to be ready for what's coming. We are living in those days, and this is a big deal. It's serious. Anyways, that leads into what we're about to talk about. Okay, so on the 4th of July, I think it was when we were at home and it was storming, and we were trying to figure out what we were going to do to kill time as the storm was passing over, because we were wanting to have a barbecue outside. And I got onto my phone, and over the past few months, I've been looking to see if Sadhu, Sundar, Selvaraj, who I've referenced in past videos, he's from India. He usually comes to the United States about once a year, sometimes twice a year, summer and sometimes Christmas. And he'll deliver a message to the people that he comes to speak to. A broad message in general to all of Christianity. His messages for me have always been very powerful, very to the core, and I have learned quite a bit. I often will share those messages in my videos. So over the past several months, I'd been checking and hadn't seen anything new. And all of a sudden, this time I wasn't looking, I'm just sitting there, and the first thing that pops up in my feed is Sadhu, Sundar, Selvaraj is here right now in the United States speaking at a prophetic conference on the 4th of July. He had been there for 3 days straight delivering a message, and I thought, oh my goodness, I am curious to know what this message is about and if he addresses the California earthquake. Now, I had shared before in past video messages how every time he comes to the United States, he has a vision and he sees something big. And the first time he visited Houston, he saw the huge flood that came. He knew that there would be a flood and he prophesied it. The minute his foot touched down on the soil, he knew it. And of course it happened. And then the first time he went to LA, the first time he visited California, the minute his foot touched the ground at the airport, he saw these giant angels standing all along the San Andreas fault line. At the time, he didn't know what that was. He later learned, yep, that's a fault line. It's called the San Andreas fault line. And he saw these giant angels. He said they must have been 300 feet tall or bigger, standing all along the fault line. And there was a chief angel who was over that area, who was over that prophesied earthquake. And they all had sledgehammers like this, and they were just waiting for the chief angel to give them the green light, to give them the command, and then they were to start pounding on that fault line. And he saw into the future that as they pounded, what would happen to the whole state of California, to certain areas. He saw what would happen. And so he prophesied that to the people of California. He said, I just had this vision and it wasn't pretty. And so here he is again visiting, and the day he's delivering a powerful message to Christians in the United States, there's an earthquake. If that's not a sign, I don't know what is. I'm feeling it right now. But I'm going to talk about more in a minute about what he said about that earthquake that just happened. So I'm so excited. So, you know, these videos are always really long because when he does these conferences, he'll speak 2 to 3 hours a day. So it ends up being a total of like 6 to 9 hours worth of video to watch. So you know I'm going to have the links down below in this video description if you want to check out those videos. However, to save you the time, I've gone through and watched every one and bullet pointed the things that stood out to me, and I'm going to share them with you. So just a quick recap on who Sadhu Sundar Selvaraj is for those of you who are new to these videos and you've never heard me talk about him. I'm going to give this description. He converted to Christianity, I believe, in the very early 80s. And since converting to Christianity, he's had amazing, incredible experiences with prophetic gifts and awesome experiences with the Lord. And he has said that it's his calling to raise up an army of Christian martyrs, of people who their mission was to come to the earth at this time to become a Christian martyr. And so he's to oversee those people. And he was shown every nation where there would be these Christian martyrs. And he was told that eventually he would need to go to each of these nations and speak to these people and help prepare them for what's to come. And so the United States is one of those nations. He talked about China, India, lots of countries in the East, but the United States was also one of those countries where there would be Christian martyrs. And so he had asked the Lord, Lord, how will I know where to go? Where do you want me to speak in the U.S.? Where should I go to deliver this message? And not too long after that, he got an invitation to come speak at a prophetic conference in Cincinnati, Ohio. And he said when that happened, the Lord confirmed to him, this is where I want you to speak. This is where you will speak to the Christian martyrs in the U.S. He was speaking to these people, as you'll see in these videos, and he said something that I've seen that's really good for everyone to know. In his own words, every wound in a martyr's body shines like stars in heaven. So he said, you know, after this life, God allows you to maintain those wounds as a witness to everyone of what your mission was and what you did on this earth. He said those scars and wounds on your body, if you were a martyr, they just dazzle, they just radiate light. Light just shoots out of them. And they're so beautiful to behold. He said God allows you to keep those scars and those wounds as a testimony. These are the ones who laid down their life for me. How incredible is that? So before he got into the gist of his message that I'm going to share here in a minute, he did say this, and this caught my attention because this is something I've been talking about a lot recently in my videos. And each time it's come up for me and I felt this is something I need to share in my video, it's always been a little bit awkward for me because I'm thinking, oh, this is something kind of dark. I don't like to touch this topic hardly ever. And usually if I do, it's when it's Halloween, right? It's usually around the time of October. I've been talking about it more often than usual lately. And so for him to bring this up was another witness to that. He said this message is specifically for the United States. He said, there will come a swift witness against sorcerers. And then he said, what are sorcerers? And he said, they are those who cast spells, chant, do magic, and witchcraft. He said they are also known in the scriptures as false prophets. He said the false prophets are often referenced as the sorcerers. He said God is now going to judge them. Time has come. And so he said we're going to start seeing that play out right now. And that's just so interesting again because it's something I've been talking about quite a bit in recent videos, is about all this witchcraft and darkness and magic and the enemy just seeping into our lives in so many ways, through music, through traditions, through culture, and we're allowing it in. But at the same time, these are very real practices. These are very real people with real intentions to do harm and participate in darkness and fight for the dark side. They've been playing a big role in these last days. But for him to say that he's received a witness that their time is now up, what does that say about where we're at on the timeline right now? If we're getting to that point, that tells me we're down to the final hour, the final minute of the final hour. All right, so he brought up two things that he wanted to talk about, and he said, judgment on this land has been set to be carried out. It is already set and it's ready to unfold and be carried out. He said this was a fresh message he just received from the Lord, and then he went on to give more detail. He said first judgment is coming to the churches, and this is interesting because again I talked about this a lot last year in many of my video messages, how the Lord was going to cleanse the churches. There are many wolves in sheep's clothing that are operating all throughout Christianity, all throughout the different churches, and how the Lord was finally going to expose them and pull them out. He said, I believe it was the day before he spoke at the conference, he was taken up and he was shown some things in heaven, and he was shown a council of people that were discussing matters of the United States. He's talked about this before, how he's been shown different councils that have that meet over different regions of the world. So there's a council over every nation. You can even break it down. There's councils over every state, over every city, but there's always a council who discusses matters of that area. I don't remember if it was the Lord or an angel, but he was asked, hey, if you're interested, would you like to sit in and listen to what they're discussing right now in their meeting about the United States? And he said, yeah, I would like to hear. So he got to listen in, and this is what they were talking about. The first thing they were talking about is the coming judgment. And he said that they talked about there are angels who have already marked certain churches, and it sounded like church buildings, for destruction. He said they had been marked with what looked like a black cross, sort of like they had almost spray painted it in the spiritual. They had spray painted and marked all these locations all over the globe, and it is set in stone. Some of these organizations, or just some of the buildings and meeting houses, were marked for destruction because of what has been taking place in them. So definitely wolves in sheep's clothing, who were doing things they shouldn't be doing and defiling those buildings, defiling those churches. He said they are marked for destruction and fire. When he said this, it reminded me of what's happening right now in the secular world. If you turn on the news, you've probably heard about the infamous billionaire who has been exposed for all of his secrets. He's committed a lot of crimes on his private island, but he didn't act alone. There's a whole list of names that are being exposed and brought into the light of celebrities, politicians, other wealthy people, millionaires, billionaires, who have flown out to his island and spent time there. From what we're learning about so far in these stories is that it involved a lot of sex trafficking and crimes of young girls, and a lot of bad things that took place on that island over a course of many years. Now that he's going to trial, he has like a phone book, like a contact book, a list of all the names of the people that he has kept in contact with over the years. It doesn't necessarily mean they've been to his island, but there are names and lists of people who have been to his island and have stayed there. And one of them being Bill Clinton. It almost seems like there's no surprise there, right? One of the names that really surprised me was Barbara Walters. But anyways, these names are starting to come out into the light, and to me, this is something we talked about a lot last year. In my video messages, I kept saying, I feel like 2019 is going to be the year where all the wolves in sheep's clothing will be exposed. They will finally be brought into the light, and it will be in the churches, it will be in the media, it will be in Hollywood, it will be in the business world, it will be all over. It's just going to happen like that, and they're going to start being indicted. And that's exactly what's happening right now. It's being brought into the light. We can see that happening. So that's what I was reminded of when he said that. Okay, he said the second thing they discussed in that council was that it was now time for the sign of Lot. Remember Lot from the Old Testament in the book of Genesis. And he said the sign of Lot, these were his own words, but the sign of Lot has very much to do with the gays and the lesbians. He said Lot's family was taken out and hidden. Now remember, they were escaping from those wicked cities, Sodom and Gomorrah. Sodom was very much filled with homosexuality and homosexual crimes. That's where we get the word sodomy from, a man raping another man. That word sodomy comes from the biblical city of Sodom, where there was all this homosexual crime and rape happening constantly. It was so normal. The city was so wicked. God said, there isn't one righteous person I can spare. Lot, you and your family are the only people I can spare, but the rest of the people must be destroyed. The cities must burn. And Lot said, oh no, surely there's somebody else who's righteous. Surely there's a few other people, maybe 10 or more. And every time he went to the Lord said, nope, there isn't even one other person. No, their hearts are all wicked. And as I thought about that, because I recently read the story of Lot as I've been reading the Bible right now, and as I read that, I thought about, you know what? It has so much to do with our hearts, because maybe we're not physically active or participating in homosexuality or anything of that nature, but because we don't take a stand for the church and the word of the Lord, because we either stay quiet or we have friends and family who are gay and very much participate in that lifestyle, and we feel we have to show our love and support for them. So we put the rainbow flags in our window and on our porch, and we participate in Gay Pride Month and whatnot, and we put the rainbow flag on our Facebook page. All the different ways that we show our support for that. We think we're just showing love and support for the person we love and we care about. But really when we do that, we're showing our support for the movement, for homosexuality. And I know it's hard because in this day that we live in, you feel like there's such a fine line because you don't want people to think you are mean, unkind, uncaring, or anti in any way. But it's not about the person. It's something you have to separate. It's not about the person. It's about the Word of God and His plan for happiness. So back to the city of Sodom, maybe these people all weren't necessarily gay or lesbian or raping other people, but because they lived there and they weren't taking a stand against it, they weren't standing up for what was morally right, they weren't preaching the Word of God, maybe some of them were doing nothing at all or saying nothing at all, but doing nothing still says something. So all the people in the city, those who weren't speaking up against it or preaching the Word of God, their hearts weren't for the Lord. Their hearts were for what was popular and what was culture. Yes, their culture was rich in Canaanite worship. That's where their hearts were. And we're going to talk about this Canaanite worship a little bit later on in the video. And so God said, I can't spare not even one of them. Their hearts have all turned from me, and they are filled with nothing but wickedness. And so He said that it is now time for the sign of Lot, that is what we are entering into. Okay, real quick, back to this Canaanite culture. Last year, and possibly earlier this year, I shared in some videos about an anonymous group of people who sort of expose news before it becomes news. And this anonymous group of, I don't know if you want to call them hackers or what they are, but they are known as Q, as in the letter Q. And that there are people out there who follow this group and they try to uncover their codes. So they release clues in the form of codes and sort of like riddles of what's coming next, what to expect in the news as far as indictments and things like that go, as far as exposing the deep state, the wolves in sheep's clothing, the Gadiaton robbers of our day. Today, as I was looking at some of these on Twitter, I saw that someone had posted some aerial shots and footage of someone who had taken a drone and flown it over the private island of the billionaire Jeffrey Epstein. And what they're seeing looks very much like Canaanite worship. They're seeing a lot of structures and symbols and things that would reflect that the people who visited this island were very much involved in modern day Canaanite worship and rituals. This structure here is being called the temple. And this right here is a giant sundial, and it says on this post, look at the sacrificial stones at the open magic hours. And as you can see at these hour points on the sundial, there are these massive stones. So as Sadhu was talking about the sign of Lot, it very much reflected everything we're seeing in the news right now, that we really aren't that different than Sodom and Gomorrah. The things that were going on back then with Canaanite worship are happening today. It's appearing that there's a lot more to this than just sex slave trafficking. It's involving Canaanite worship, rituals, and powerful people from all over the world who are somehow a part of this. Here was a clue dropped from the anonymous group known as Q back on April 3rd, 2018, referencing Pope Francis and Jeffrey Epstein. Here is another clue that they had posted back on November 11th, 1111, 2017. And it says on there, does Satan exist? Does the thought of Satan exist? Who worships Satan? What is a cult? Epstein Island. What is a temple? What occurs in a temple? Worship? Why is the temple on top of a mountain? How many levels might exist below? What is the significance of the colors, design, and symbol and the dome? Why is this relevant? Who are the puppet masters? Have the puppet masters traveled to this island? When? How often? And why? So they were bringing this into the light 2 years ago. Yes, 2 years ago, they were trying to tell us what we are finally discovering today. And now back to Sadhu. And he said, remember what happened with Lot? His family was taken out before the destruction happened. And we're going to see that happen again right now. Very soon, we're entering that sign. So he said there are 3 parts to this sign. He said that God is preserving a righteous remnant to remain on the earth for when he returns. So when the Lord returns, he needs to return to a righteous people. So those people are getting gathered right now, which we know they've pretty much been gathered. And now he's going to take measures to preserve them for when he returns. He said there are 3 ways this will happen. The first, there will be a group of this remnant who will be taken up supernaturally. And that might be what some people call the rapture, but that's not for everyone. He said there will be some people who will just disappear. They will just be taken up supernaturally and hidden and preserved until when the Lord returns, and then he will bring them back to fulfill their role. He said then there will be a group of people who he saw who the Lord will hide in the wilderness. And this is what they were discussing in that council in heaven. There will be a group of saints who will be hidden in the wilderness, and they will live there for a time as all this destruction happens and takes place, and they will be preserved and then brought back out for when the Lord returns. Then there will be a third group who will just be asked to leave. It will just be sudden and quick. You need to leave. You need to leave your home right now. You need to leave your city right now. Just go. Go stay at your sister's house or something, but just get up and leave right now. So they won't necessarily be hidden. They will just be asked to leave and relocate somewhere else. But he said all of these will happen fast. They will be sudden and quick. It will just be, you'll be taken up, or you'll be told right away, it's time to go into the wilderness, it's time to be hidden, or you'll be asked to leave. Just go right away, go now, now, now. It won't be something that will take a lot of time that you'll be able to plan for and go through your checklist and gather everything. It'll just be go now. So he said this will be very quick, but he saw this happening all over the world. So again, he went back to the sign of Lot and he talked about the homosexuality, and he said it's not just about those who practice it, but it's those who support it and aren't seeing anything morally wrong with it, aren't seeing it as something that goes against the word of God. He said it is all these people who will be destroyed. The righteous remnant will be protected, must be protected. He said the angels of destruction have already been commissioned. They are ready to go. They've been given their assignment and they're just waiting for the green light. He said the angels of destruction have been commissioned over certain things. There are angels of plagues, angels of tornadoes, angels of fire, and on and on and on. And then he went on to talk about California, and he brought up the earthquake. He said we had 2 earthquakes in the last 24 hours. And he said, that's not a coincidence. There's a reason for that. Now, before I get into what he said, this is interesting because on a Facebook post, someone had brought this up, and I wrote my feelings and thoughts. I felt that it was sort of like a caution or a warning to the people of California, because most of the people of California, not all of the people of California, but the lawmakers and many of the big cities in California are trying to do things independent from God. They're saying, we don't need God. Get God out of here. Take him out of everything. Take him out of the culture. Take him out of the schools. Take him and his word out of California. We don't want him here. So they're trying to do things independent from God. And to me, that was a sign of why this happened on Independence Day. And God was saying, look, if you want to be independent of me and say that you don't need me and you don't need my word and you don't want it, there's going to be a shaking, because I love you too much to let that happen. So if I have to shake things up to bring you back to me, then so be it. So then Sadhu talked about this, and he said just recently, California has been trying to pass something known as ACR 99 that basically does what I just talked about, kicks God and his word out of California. I'm going to go into detail here. This is from a news article, and I've got all these links down below. But it says the California Assembly member Evan Lowe and 36 other lawmakers are pushing a resolution, ACR 99, that would make preaching the biblical views of homosexuality a crime. Now let me just stop right there. If it becomes criminal, if it becomes a crime to preach the word from the Bible, then it's going to make the Bible illegal. The Bible won't even be permitted to be in California, not to sell, not to have. It goes on to say the law would forbid counseling LGBT people to change their same-sex attractions for their gender identities. Churches and pastors would no longer be able to encourage members of the gay community to embrace the life-changing power of God's Word. The state of California would basically be the final authority on biblical doctrine when it comes to sexuality. The state would also determine what the churches can teach and what they can't. So I'm going to pause right there. So I've read this resolution, and what it basically says is that you can't speak anything negative about homosexuality. You can't say that homosexual acts are a sin or something to be repented of. Whatever your church doctrine teaches, whatever the Bible teaches, that will become a crime to say that. And so it says, if passed, politicians would be able to dictate what teaching will be acceptable for pastors and their congregations. They are attempting to place themselves in the position of God and define morality. This would force people of faith to embrace what the Bible condemns. Again, I can see the need for home church. When things like this start happening and our church doctrine becomes illegal or criminal, well, we'll only be able to have these discussions with our children in the privacy of our own homes. This proposed legislation, called Assembly Concurrent Resolution 99, calls on counselors, pastors, religious workers, educators, and institutions with great moral influence to stop promoting the idea that there is something morally wrong with homosexuality. The law would also condemn any attempt to ask people to change their LGBT beliefs or lifestyles. LGBT militants are trying to use the strong arm of the state to force their agenda upon the churches. All right, I'm going to stop right there for a minute. Now this was interesting. I found some articles in response to this. All right, before I read this next article, I just want to say that last year, this was actually a bill that was in motion in California, and it was known as AB 2943, and it had actually gone pretty far. It was just working its way up to the governor, and he was about to sign it, and then the man who drew up the bill said, wait, I'm going to pull it because I think we can do it even better. And he said, you know what, I think we could probably get it done the way we're doing it, but it would be even better if we could get all the churches supporting this. Because if we can get the religious community in the state of California to say, hey, we support this too, then it will have even better results among all the people if they can see that their own churches are supporting this. So that's exactly what he's done, is he's gone out and gathered the support from all the churches and shown them all the pros of why they should be on board with this. And surprisingly, so many of them are supporting it. And so now it's been turned into ACR 99. And so the man who wrote this article used to be gay. And according to his story, he found the Lord and gave his life to the Lord, put all of his sins on the altar, and the Lord transformed him. And he's no longer a homosexual. He's no longer gay, and it changed his life. He now is a Christian minister. So here's what he said. He said, I left my six-figure salary almost 20 years ago to pursue a career in pastoral ministry simply because my Christian faith had so powerfully addressed my pain and transformed me. Okay, I'm feeling that. He's saying that, you know what, it was my pain, the things that had happened to me in my past that led me into this gay lifestyle, because I saw that as a fix. I saw that as a band-aid to cover up my pain. But it turns out that's not what I really wanted, and that's not what really made me happy. And when I finally found the Lord and allowed him to transform me from the inside out and heal my pain, I was no longer interested in men. Okay. So he says, today, as part of a pastoring team who co-leads Equipped to Love, we work with many people who have been part of the LGBTQ community who are unhappy and are looking for a different way forward. LGBTQ is not a solution for everybody. He then said, ACR 99 singles out only therapists and religious groups as the ones to blame for stigma that LGBT people have, which leads to high rates of suicide. It was therapists and religious groups that specifically brought me and so many others like those at changedmovement.com out of our struggles with suicidal tendencies. So he's saying, look, me and a lot of my friends who live this lifestyle and were part of this community, we were already suicidal. As we lived the gay lifestyle, we were suicidal. We were dealing with this every day. It was actually the church and therapists who brought us out of those suicidal tendencies and pointed us towards the light and helped heal us. He said ACR 99 elevates government ideology above an individual's right to religious freedom. So it's saying, you know, the government decides what's best. Not God, not your church, but the government. With this resolution, now it's interesting, they're no longer calling it a bill, it's now a resolution. With this resolution, individuals, leaders, and even therapists and religious institutions are commanded to embrace homosexuality as something to be applauded, giving no thought to potential ramifications to a person's spouse, children, or to a person whose own religious or personal convictions do not align with that ideology. So he's saying, look, you're not even considering all the people that this affects. If someone decides to become homosexual and they have a spouse and they have children and they're willing to go down that road of therapy to see if this is something that can be turned around so that they can stay with their wife, be with their children, and make this work, and they're willing to do that, this is now saying that that is not allowed anymore. That's not even an option. It's off the table. Okay, so he goes on to say Americans have been given rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And the California government should not be usurping those inalienable rights. Okay, this is interesting because I shared some articles about this, and I may have mentioned it in some past videos, how I went to a conference. It was the Firm Expo 2 years ago, and how I went and listened to a presenter there that I had no idea was going to be presenting there. I'd never heard of them before. It was a husband and wife, and they shared their story about their son, who was a Latter-day Saint, and how he became gay in high school and lived that lifestyle for many years, and then one day found the Lord and was immediately transformed. And when he came out of that transformation, he no longer was interested in men. And he ended up getting married and having a family, and he goes around now speaking about this, and how the one thing that frustrated all of them, him included, was that no one ever spoke of it being an option, that this was something the Savior could heal, that this was something he could be healed of. That was taboo. Through leaders in their ward, through people in the community, no one ever said that because it's so taboo, because it's basically saying, if you're saying that this is something I need to be healed of, then you're saying me feeling this way is a sin, and this is something that's wrong, and there's something wrong with me. I need to be healed of this. I'm broken, right? But listening to his story and so many other stories I found since then that I've shared in those past articles, posts, and videos, including the story that I shared today, these people are all saying, you know what? Being homosexual was a result of my pain and my trauma. It was a way to cover it up. It was the way I dealt with it. Once I was finally healed of all that inner trauma, I lost my attraction for the same gender, and it changed my life. I was a completely different person. And my depression went away. I was no longer suicidal. And so that's really interesting. And there's also stories that I've shared in that video and in those posts about a conference where these same speakers, they go and they speak this message and they say, you know what, we are so rejected. We are rejected by every community because no one likes our message. It's too controversial, and we're most hated by the LGBTQ community. Because we're saying this is an alternative option and they don't like it. So we receive death threats. Our lives have been on the line so many times. It is so dangerous for us to share this message, for us to share our personal story and journey. And many of the people on that panel had sex changes, and they had all done a complete turnaround and said, we reject that lifestyle. We no longer support that. It was so damaging to us in every way, and here's why. Now we're happy. Now our depression's gone. Now we truly know our identity. There's no more confusion, but we were so confused during that time of our life when we thought we knew who we were and we knew what we wanted to be. We were so wrong, and that's why we were so depressed and struggling with suicide. So I found that interesting. But if you try to share those stories, you too will experience that persecution. So I'll have links to that down below if you want to check it out. But that's what this man was saying, is that's sad that that can no longer be an option that people want. A lot of us wanted that option, but we didn't even know it was an option. When we found out that this was something we could take to the Lord and He could heal us and transform us from the inside out, when we found out that was an option, we were so happy. We felt so relieved, and it worked. He changed us. He made us better. We're so much happier. Living the Word of God has brought us so much peace. And so they're saying that now that this isn't even an option anymore, people aren't going to be told, here's your options A, B, C, D, and oh yeah, if this is something you don't think you want to be anymore, or you want to find a way out of it, here's option E. So that is going to be a crime now to even suggest that the Lord can heal you. Something that I just wanted to add real quick is that I remember when I was listening to that panel that was talking about how they had been healed from confused identities and they had been healed from homosexuality and all of that. Some of the things I've heard in that group, in that arena, in that conversation is that one thing that really upset a lot of them and angered them was that just because a child happens to be more feminine or more masculine shouldn't change their gender. So they were saying that if you're a girl and you come across as more masculine, it doesn't mean you need to be a boy. And the way our society is that they teach you, oh, well, you're more masculine, so you need to be attracted to girls because you're more like a boy. So you're a girl now being told that you need to be attracted to girls. You're being told that you're gay. Or same with boys. You're more feminine and you're drawn to things that are feminine. And so society tells you, well, that's because you're most likely a girl. So you need to be attracted to boys. You need to be attracted to masculine. So you're gay. You can either be gay or get a gender transformation, and then you can physically be a girl attracted to boys. And so they were saying that that's wrong. Just because you're a boy who happens to be more feminine and you connect with more feminine things doesn't mean you have to be attracted to boys. And just because you're a girl who happens to be drawn to more masculine things and you identify as more masculine doesn't mean that you're a boy trapped in a girl's body and that you need to like girls. And so that's where society fails. That's what they're saying, is that's where society fails, is we need to teach our children that you can still be a feminine boy or a masculine girl and still be attracted to the opposite gender and still be able to enjoy a heterosexual lifestyle and marry someone of the opposite gender and have a family, and you can be happy doing that. But where the confusion comes in is when people are telling you, well, you're the opposite gender trapped in the wrong body. And that starts to confuse people. That starts to confuse the children, and they think, well, what's wrong with me? Or why did this happen? Or how do I fix it? What do I need to do? And then they're told what they need to do, and they don't know how they feel about that. And it just adds to the confusion. Many times they head down that path or they make the transition and they find that they're still confused. They're still not fully happy. There's still something missing. You know, we don't have all the answers and we don't know why things happen the way that they do. We just have to trust the Lord on that. Trust that He has a plan for everything. He has a plan for everyone, but that His word never changes. It never changes. We can't change His word to fit our lifestyle. That needs to be the other way around. We change our lifestyle, we adjust our habits and our behaviors to fit His word. So are you going to be ready when your siblings, your neighbors, your coworkers, your kids' friends and their parents start to point fingers at you and persecute you because of where you stand on what's coming and with homosexuality? Are you prepared for that? It's going to be really hard. It's not going to be easy. I mean, imagine having your neighbors tell their kids, you can't play with that family because of what they believe. They're bigots, they're hateful, I don't want you playing with them. It could affect you not getting a job. It could cause you to lose a job. It could cause you to lose friendships, relationships in your family. It could cause you to lose business if you're a business owner. Are you prepared for that? Are you prepared for the rest of the world to point their fingers at you and ostracize you and treat you like an enemy? It's not going to feel good. It's not going to be fun. It's going to make you very unpopular. But are you prepared to carry that cross? Okay, so Sadhu Sundar Selvaraj talked about this, and he said this just happened right now in California. They're ready to get this thing passed, and they've been working on it this week. And so he said these earthquakes in California is a testament of what the people of California are doing against God. Well, God is not going to be silent about that. He is not going to tolerate that. And right at this point, while editing the video, I took this screenshot. There was my witness number, 113 and 11. 311, pay attention in this 11th hour. This is the message we need to hear. Now, this leads right into what he shared next as he was listening in on the Council in Heaven talk about the United States. And he said, persecution and martyrdom are coming to my people. That's what he heard the Lord say. It's coming to my people, but they will not be prepared for it. Now, who recently said that? Did we not recently just hear the First Presidency of the church talk about that? I shared that in my past couple of videos. People who have had encounters with the First Presidency, and they've said, prepare your people, prepare your wards, prepare the people for what's coming, because they're not going to be ready for it. We fear that they're not prepared for it. And what did President Nelson say to the Samoans when he went and visited the islands? He said, protect your children from what's coming. You need to protect your children. Well, Sadhu went on to talk about this very thing. So there it was again, another witness. I first heard Sadhu start talking about this a little over a year ago as he went to visit people of other nations, and he was saying the same thing, protect the children. Prepare for the persecution and martyrdom that's coming. It's coming, you can't stop it, so you need to be ready for it. I'm going to pause right there. He went on to talk about food storage, and he said, you know, it's funny, in the United States, I noticed that you guys are all so big on food storage. When you talk about preparedness, you think of being physically prepared and having all your medical supplies and your food and your big drums and gallons of wheat and water and whatever it is. And he says that's really big here in America. But he says you're great with that. Like, you've got it made with that. You get it. You're really good with that food preparation and all things physical. But where you're weak, where you're lacking, is spiritually prepared. He said, you're not ready for these moments when you're going to be faced with, you choose the Lord or do you choose your life? Choose the Lord and you will die right here and now in front of your family or with your family, or reject the Lord and we will give you food. We will allow you to live. Well, you think, oh yeah, I know what I'll do in that moment. Of course I'm going to choose the Lord. But he said when it comes down to that moment, so many people will apostatize in those moments. They will apostatize. They will abandon the Lord, and they'll say in their mind, you know what? Lord, you get it. You understand. You know I really care about you and I really love you and I don't really mean this, but I've got to do it so I can survive and so my kids can survive. You understand. He said that won't matter. What's done is done. What we say, what comes out of our mouth is written in our book of life, and so be it. When we deny the Lord, we lose our soul. We lose our place in his kingdom. That's how serious it is. And he said, not very many people are going to be ready for that. They're not going to be able to deal with it, and there will be such a great apostasy when all this persecution and martyrdom rolls out across the earth. In fact, he said that during these times of heavy persecution and destruction, that the saints will have such great faith that they will be able to manifest food out of the ground, that there will be crazy miracles. There will be people who will call forth cauliflower or milk or whatever it is, whatever they're needing, they'll call it forth and it will come out of the ground right away, instantly. That's the kind of faith they will have. That's the kind of faith that belongs to the remnant. He said that instead of putting all of our focus on our food storage, that we should be putting our focus on building our faith and strengthening our faith, because it's our faith that will get us through these times, not necessarily our food storage. All right, so we brought up May 2006, and that's significant because my oldest, my son Gabe, was born in May 2006. So this had my attention. He said in May 2006, the Lord said to him, "It's time for some of Matthew chapter 24, verse 8 to be fulfilled." And he said this verse starts out with, "These are the beginning of sorrows." And he was told in May 2006, it's now time for this to start happening. That's funny because that's when my son was born, and I've always felt like he has an important mission on this earth at this time. Now, right as I edited that clip in the video, I looked up and there it was, 14411. So I took a screenshot. I believe that these young boys are part of the 144,000 in this 11th hour. Big witness. So he said a lot has happened since 2006. He said that a trial will come upon the whole world for a test. That this is coming. And he brought up the false prophet. He said, this is what we're getting into right now. And he's talked about this before. I've shared this in past videos where he has mentioned that he was shown the identity of the false prophet. Not the Antichrist, that's something different. But he was shown the identity of the false prophet, and it is Pope Francis. And I've talked about this before in past videos. But he said that next year there is a meeting scheduled in Holland, a meeting put on by Pope Francis, and it's an invitation for leaders of other churches and other nations to come together and enter into a covenant. It's a covenant to worship the beast, or in other words, the one world religion. Now, this is no surprise. A lot of us have been seeing this take place over the past couple of years. It was interesting when President Nelson was in Rome and he met the Pope. I couldn't help but wonder if the Pope had extended an invitation to him as well to become a part of this one world religion. It has Muslim leaders and Buddhist leaders, but people of other religions, not just Christianity, who are coming together saying, you know what, let's agree that we are all one religion. We all worship one God. We'll give him a name. He's who we all worship. He's the God of all of us. And we'll agree on that, and we'll join in this one world religion because we want unity and we want everyone to come together as one. And of course, this is the adversary. This is Satan mimicking what God is doing, because God also has a vision of unity and oneness and everyone coming together for the return of the Lord. You know, that Zion, basically what the millennium is going to be. And so Satan's trying to mimic that. Well, this reminds me of the Council of Nicaea that took place in 325 AD. Now, this is where Constantine gathered everyone together, all the Christian leaders of the day, brought them all together and said, look, we need to unify with what we define as our doctrine. We need to come together and we need to vote on this. We need to make some decisions. So Constantine convened the first worldwide church council, and what ended up happening with this is what we know as the Great Apostasy. They came up with what they call the Nicene Creed, which erased the idea of the separate being of the Father and the Son. So, you know, we have the Father and the Son and the Holy Ghost as three separate beings. But after this decision, it was declared that God the Father and the Son are of one substance. They are one. They are the same. So true Christianity was radically changed, and Greek philosophies were mixed in with this and mingled in with the doctrine and all the changes. There was no revelation from God. This was men coming together and agreeing. This was voting. This was making decisions. And this was their way of bringing all of Christianity together into one church. And if you were not a part of this, you were cast out. You were not credible. This is what began the beginning of the Catholic Church. And we're seeing this happen right now. Not to unify all of Christianity and make it all one church all over the world, but to make it all one world church. Every religion, bring every religion together and vote on one agreeable creed. They are entering into a covenant, and for all of those who don't join this one world religion, well, they will be cast out. They will be the outcasts. Now, this reminds me of the two churches that the scriptures speak about in the last days, the church of the devil and the church of the Lamb, the church of the Lord. But I have to add that even Christians can belong to the church of the devil because it's all about where your heart is. If your heart truly isn't with the Lord, if you aren't truly serving Him and following Him, if you're not a true Christian, well, then you don't belong to His church. But let's talk more about this covenant that they're entering into, because the word covenant has been coming up quite a bit this week for me. Now, at this prophetic conference last week, Sadhu mentioned that he had seen the angel of the covenant, that the angel of the covenant is coming right now to prepare the way for the return of the Lord. And he continued over and over to talk about this angel of the covenant and covenants. And this reminded me of in recent general conferences, it's been emphasized over and over how important it is for us to stay on the covenant path. As Latter-day Saints, we take our covenants very seriously, or at least we should. Now, the symbol for a covenant is the rainbow, because it's the covenant that God made to His people that He would never flood the earth again. And so when I think of a covenant, I always think of a rainbow. Now, I've talked about in past videos many times symbols that I see in trending fashions. So whenever I see something and it's trending in clothing, I hear pay attention, and I always feel a message in that. I know I've talked about that in the past with stars and unicorns and other things that have been big in clothing, but this time, you guys, it's rainbows. During editing this video, I took my kids clothes shopping today, and I couldn't believe that everywhere we looked, everything had rainbows. And it's so funny because when I pointed it out and I started taking pictures, as you can see, suddenly a song came on in the store about rainbows. And then my daughter made mention of that. She noticed it too. Then as soon as we got in the car and I turned the car on, there was a song on the radio about rainbows. And so I think I did make a connection. This is a clear sign of the covenant. And Sadhu continues to talk about how this angel of the covenant is coming right now. And he's seen him. And there's just so much being talked about right now about covenants. Even the enemy is trying to mimic these covenants and steal these symbols. Though the adversary has given the rainbow a completely different meaning, we do see it dominating fashion and pop culture right now more than ever. Are you noticing it too? Okay, now someone reached out to me and she gave me permission to share this. I think this is highly significant, and I'm going to talk about it right at this point in the video because I'm reminded of it when I think of the angel of the covenant. So her email says, "Hi Lindsay, I listened to your last video and was intrigued with your description of the birds attacking you and your sister. I'm serving a mission in Nauvoo, and we had an interesting thing happen here a few weeks ago regarding birds. My husband and I were driving to the pageant building on the edge of town to attend a practice. On the way, as we passed by the temple, I happened to look up and see a large swarm of very large black birds hovering around the dome. I rarely see birds land on it or on Angel Moroni, because the temple has a recording of birds playing up in the dome to keep other birds from landing on it. But there was one bird sitting on Moroni's trumpet and another on top of the dome, with others circling around. It seemed kind of eerie to me. So when we returned about an hour later, I looked up to see the dome completely covered with these birds, as well as 3 on Moroni's trumpet. There's the number 3. And 1 on his head. This seemed unreal, as I had never seen any birds on the temple before. Besides this going on, there was a huge storm rolling in. By the time we got back to our house, the sirens in Nauvoo were going off, signaling a tornado warning. As I considered what I had seen at the temple, the thought occurred to me that those birds were a visual symbol of what Satan's dark forces are doing, attacking all that is God's. It was as if they were signaling the storm to come and attack the temple. I didn't stop to take a picture because we were in the midst of a severe storm warning, but I know I will never forget that image and what it represented to me. Then, as you may have heard, last week, Angel Moroni in Nauvoo was struck by lightning, leaving his face blackened where the gold leafing had been burned, and also destroying a piece of his trumpet, the part between Moroni's hand and his mouth. President Nelson has spent the last few years circling the globe crying repentance to all who would listen. He has mentioned that this is the message he felt impelled to share. So, when I saw the picture of Moroni with a damaged trumpet, I had the thought that God may soon be through sounding his warning voice through his servants and will now preach his own sermons through the thundering, lightning, and storms. We have had several violent storms here in the Midwest this spring and summer, and you have probably seen the devastation of tornadoes and flooding that have occurred. Just all signs of the times we are living in. I just thought I would share these thoughts as they seem to go along with the things that you have been expressing in your videos. Thanks so much. So I responded to her, and it's interesting because I had the same thoughts that she did before I read that part of her email. I said, oh my goodness, I have spirit bumps all over after reading this. I just got back into town after a road trip, and yours was the first email I have read. I got the exact same feeling when I read your description of the angel Moroni, that God was done sounding the alarm. This was it. Time is up. Satan is aware of this, and he is thrilled. He's going to take down as many souls as he can. The battle is on. Wow. An additional thought that I had about this when I was looking at this image of the mouthpiece that is missing and the trump being silenced, when I think of a mouthpiece, I think of the prophet. He is the mouthpiece for the Lord, and the enemy is trying to silence him. Also, when I thought about a silent Trump, I thought about President Trump. Could this be a warning that President Trump is also about to be silenced, heard no more? He did talk about the chip, and he said that this is something that's already happening. It's happening in Sweden right now. He talked about how this is a part of a world census, how it's going to take off in Sweden, and as it gains momentum there, he said it won't be long before all the other countries that are a part of the European Union, for them to jump on board with this, and it's just going to spread so fast. But he said this is the way it's going to be marketed and sold to everyone, is they're going to say, look, this is such a good thing. It's a world census. This will be the easiest, fastest way to keep track of every person on the earth, to know where they always are, to know their history, their background, their health records, everything about them. You no longer will have to have paperwork and keep ID cards and have all these things on you. You know, you just have this chip and everything about you, your entire history, all your records are there. And they're going to say this is a good thing. I mean, if you, for example, are visiting abroad and something happens to you and you end up in a hospital and you're in a coma, all they have to do is scan your chip and they know your health history. They know how to help you. Or another way he said they're going to market it is they're going to say, you know what, this is great for people who live alone. You know, if grandma lives all alone and all of a sudden her heart stops, all of her children and grandchildren are going to get a text and an alert that grandma's heart just stopped. Her vital signs just gave out. So, you know, to go over there and start giving her CPR or to call 911 or, you know, it's sort of like life alert. So who wouldn't want that, right? So they're going to come up with all these ways of how this makes life easier and better, and especially for your loved ones. So everyone's going to want to be on board with it. They're not going to see anything wrong with it. Well, this is going to become mandatory, and they're going to say this is the world census now. All these nations will join together and say we're on board with this world census, and so we are taking a census of the people. If you refuse to be a part of this census and you refuse to be counted and participate and get your chip, well, that's basically going against your government, and there's going to be penalties for that. You're going to be arrested, and eventually there's going to be so many people being arrested that the prisons and jails won't be able to contain them all. So they're going to say, look, you know what? The penalty for refusing this is death. You're going against your country. You're going against your government. You're being a traitor, right? The penalty for that is death. So they're going to say you either accept this or you lose your life. But a part of accepting that is joining this one world religion and being part of the one world system, which means you have to be a part of that religion, which means you deny your God. A lot of people are going to give into that and say, you know what, it's not worth it. God will understand. I'm just going to get the chip. It's just going to make my life easier. I don't want to go to jail. I don't want to be shot or beheaded. I want to live. But they give up that tiny speck on their eternal timeline, that tiny speck to have physical life. They give that up for a whole eternity of living with God. It's not worth it, but people won't be prepared for that. They won't be ready for that decision. Now, he talked about something I wasn't able to find record of. I wasn't able to find anything to verify this, but he talked about how beginning next year in 2020, it will be mandatory for every newborn baby in Sweden to be chipped in the hospital when they're born. And that's where this is starting. It's starting next year, as is the One World meeting to enter into this covenant with Pope Francis. Now, I wasn't able to find an article about that, but if you happen to find anything, I'd love to hear it. I know it's been hearsay for the past decade or even longer that this is something that's going to happen eventually in Sweden, and it's been rumored for quite a while. But anyways, he says it's going to be marketed as it's the good for everyone. It's for the overall good of everyone. Okay, so he goes on to talk about the worldwide persecution, and he said again, some people will be taken up, some people will be hidden in the wilderness, and other people will be martyred. So we talked earlier about the 3 ways that the protected remnant will remain on the earth. They'll be taken up, hidden, or told to get out. But he said there will be many who it's part of their mission to be martyred, to give up their life for Jesus Christ. And that's why they're here. So there will be many, many, many Christians who will be martyred. And I'm feeling that right now. And he said the biggest driving force behind all this martyrdom and persecution will be the LGBTQ community. He said they see the Christian churches as their biggest enemy because it's the Christian churches, it's Christianity standing in the way of what they want to do. So Christians are enemy number 1 all over the world. He said this is a worldwide movement. He says we've been able to see that right now happening over the past few years, how fast it's gone with this pride movement, right? It just kind of rose up overnight. All of a sudden there's Pride Month and everyone's celebrating it. And you know, if you're not a bigot and you're not filled with hate, you're putting a rainbow flag on your front porch or in your window, right? Now again, I'm gonna say it's one thing to love your fellow man and to love them as a child of God, and it's another thing to support the movement. You know, there's such a fine line because it's hard to distinguish that. It's hard to see where the black and the white meets. There's so much gray, and people think, well, I'm not saying that acting out homosexuality is not a sin, but I feel like that by putting the flag in my window or on my front door is just showing my LGBTQ brothers and sisters that I support them and I love them and I care about them. Well, there's ways to do that, but really when you put that flag up, it shows your support for that movement. It shows your support for homosexuality and where it's taking our nation with these laws, how it's overtaking Christianity and the Word of God, and it's crushing it, it's silencing it, and it's making God's Word illegal. It's making it a crime. Again, we have to learn what it means to love our brothers and sisters no matter what, no matter their skin color, no matter their religion, their beliefs, and of course their sexual identity. But it doesn't mean we have to support the movement. It doesn't mean we have to support homosexuality. And right now, that's what that rainbow flag represents. I know this video message is going to stir up a lot of emotions and a lot of people who are watching it. And truthfully, this wasn't what I was going to talk about. When I was preparing this message over the last week, I was just going to focus. My plans were to just focus on service, loving others, and being prepared for what's coming. But when I heard Sadhu talk about this, I mean, I just felt it from head to toe. I mean, my spirit bumps were just on fire. And I knew this is what people won't be ready for. They won't be ready for this. As this movement takes over the world, it's going to be so unpopular, so uncool to speak the Word of God, to preach the Word of God from the Scriptures. That's going to be so old-fashioned. It's going to be called hatred, the old ways. the ways of a bigoted person, right? There's going to be so much persecution that people are going to say, you know what, it's just easier to get on board with this. You know, it's not hurting me any. But the deceiving part of this is for years, people who choose this lifestyle have always been able to do so. Ever since the fall of Adam and Eve, when Cain killed Abel, sin has been on the earth. And we still love everyone. We still love sinners. It doesn't mean we have to love the sin or we have to tolerate the sin, but we love the sinner. We love the person. And who taught us that best? Our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. But there comes a point when we have to remember homosexuality has been on the earth for centuries. It's nothing new. But now we're seeing a point in time, on the timeline in history, where it's overriding the Word of God. It's overriding Christianity. It's interfering with our freedoms and our rights to believe and practice the Word of God. And God's not going to sit back and let that happen. That's why we're going to see so much more things manifesting in the physical. We're going to see all this spiritual warfare, spiritual battle manifesting in the physical. And we're going to see it happen in places where people are trying to kick out the Word of God. So he said the LGBT community will be the biggest persecutors against the Christians. They will be filled with much, much hatred towards the Christians. Now again, I want to say if you're a true Christian, you don't have hatred in your heart for anyone. And so that's where this is misinterpreted by so many. It's being misinterpreted that if you're Christian and you see acting out on homosexuality as a sin, the world will say, well, that means you hate homosexuals. That means you hate gay people. That means you're a hater, and that's wrong. But that's not true. You can still reject the sin and love the person, love the sinner. And in a true Christian, that's what you will find. That's what you will find in their heart. But it's the opposite for the other team. The LGBTQ community, so many are being indoctrinated and filled with that hate that Christians are the enemy. We have to take them down. We cannot love them. We cannot coexist with them. We have to take them down by interfering on their rights, shutting down their churches, taking out their Bibles, and just stopping it all. Now, whose plan is that? Is that the Lord's plan? No. That is the plan of the adversary. That is the plan of darkness, to shut down the Word of God, to shut it all down and pull it all out. But again, as we've seen for years and centuries, especially here in America, this is a land where you can believe what you want, practice what you want, as long as it doesn't infringe on the rights of others, as long as it's not overstepping the boundaries and taking away someone else's right. And that's what we're seeing happen right now. We're seeing one group of people say, we want X, Y, and Z, and the only way we can be happy and get X, Y, and Z is by taking away all of your rights. So we're going to shut you down and silence you so that we can be happy and we can have the things that we want. So there's no middle ground, there's no negotiation, right? And so I think that's why we've seen the church come out earlier this year and speak up against the Equality Act and say, you know what? This is where we draw the line. We can no longer support this because it infringes on our rights. There is no equality in this Equality Act. It's completely one-sided. So then Sadhu went on to say, you know, right now you need to pray that your president, President Trump, does not make mistakes. He said, yes, he is God's chosen president, but as of lately, especially the last 6 months, he's been making a lot of mistakes that God is not happy with. And he mentioned one of that being supporting gay pride. And I'm not familiar with what happened with that, so I'll have to go look into that. I'm not sure about that, but that's what he brought up. And he said if he continues to make mistakes, the next president will be the woman who rides the beast. So that's prophetic. And he said, we need to pray that God will remove the worldly ministers that surround the president. He said right now he has a circle of influential Christian ministers, counselors, pastors, prophets, whatnot. But he said that most of them are worldly and selfish, and they are giving him bad and selfish counsel that benefits them. He said that he feels a terror of that happening, of the president continuing to make mistakes based on the bad counsel he's receiving, of these wolves in sheep's clothing that are surrounding him. And if this continues, he fears that this will happen. He said if the next president is the woman who rides the beast, it will be the same situation as it was with Jezebel. And if you're not familiar with Jezebel, go back and read your scriptures. But he basically said, you know what, with Jezebel, she got into power and she had all the prophets killed, all the true prophets of God, all the true ministers, all those who preached the word of God. She had them all killed. They were all taken out. It was illegal. And then she brought in all the sorcerers and the false prophets, and she gave those people high positions of power, and they surrounded her. And those are the changes she brought into the land. But he said if President Trump continues to make mistakes, God will not help him win this next election. So quickly, I just want to add in here that I believe right now the Lord is kind of doing some last-ditch efforts to get us where we need to be with our hearts so that we'll be ready. And I believe that a lot of people who have some work to do with their heart are going to start experiencing these smaller trials right now, preparing us for the ultimate test that's coming. Because if we can work through these smaller trials and we can allow them to do a work on our heart, we just might be able to be ready for what's coming, for that ultimate test of choosing the Savior or the world. I believe that a lot of people are experiencing trials right now, and what's so crazy is that in my own life, I have come across quite a bit of people that are close to my age over the last few weeks that have been diagnosed with terminal conditions, terminal illnesses, and have had major things happen in their life, and there's been a lot of deaths in their family, and just so much happening right now that's really working on their heart. And I truly believe that this is out of love, that God's saying, look, I need you to make covenants with me. I need you to come to me. I need you. I love you. I haven't forgotten you. So I'm going to shake things up in your life to bring you closer to me so that you'll choose me, so that you can be with me because I love you. And if we're too blind and we're too deaf to recognize that, then we're just going to complain and struggle through these trials, and we won't be prepared for the ultimate test that's coming. And so I would say this is definitely a wake-up call. I know I did a video not that long ago about wake-up calls, right? God's trying to wake us up and say, look, I need you. Turn your heart back to me. If you've been away from the temple for years and years and years, come back. Renew those covenants with me. Remember those promises. It's a way that he's bringing us back to him. So anyways, I want to share real quick about two people in our life, in our family. We don't see them very often. They don't live in Utah. But these two people in our family who we love very much, one was just diagnosed with a possible blindness and had to have an emergency surgery on her eye because she was told if she didn't have it right away, she would go permanently blind in both of her eyes. So she had this emergency surgery on the 4th of July, and we'll have the other surgery a year from now, but this surgery requires that she be still for 3 months. She has to be still. She can't walk, she can't get up, she can't clean, she can't do things. She has to be still for 3 months. I found a lot of significance in that. And then this other person in our family just found out during the same week that he has to have emergency surgery on his ears, and if he doesn't, he will be 100% permanently deaf very soon. And so it's even possible with these surgeries that she will be blind and he will still be deaf. It might not fix it. So anyways, as I was thinking about this, I got thinking, oh my goodness, I heard the Lord say, those who have eyes to see and ears to hear. God loves these family members very much and wants them. He doesn't want to lose them. He needs them. He wants them right now. And we've tried to share the gospel with them over the years. We've tried. We've shared our testimony. We've tried to share so many truths with them. But the one family member has been interested and has said that she wants to go to church and she wants to learn more, but she never does it and hasn't done it for years, but has felt the witness of that truth. And the other family member does not want to hear it. He doesn't want to hear it. And when we've tried to share it, he's made it very clear, I don't want anything to do with this. I don't want to hear anything about it. And it very much upsets him. And so I heard the Lord say, He does not want to hear the message, and she does not want to see the blessings. They do not have eyes to see or ears to hear. So I am giving them an opportunity to see and hear. But if they reject this opportunity, they will not only remain spiritually blind and spiritually deaf, but they will be physically blind and physically deaf as a testament of what they have rejected. And as I got thinking about this, I thought, oh my goodness, that sounds so harsh. I don't understand. That sounds so harsh. And then I got thinking about it. You know what? This is something that I can help with. I can pray that their eyes will be opened and that their ears will be opened. And I can pray for help from the other side of the veil, for more opportunities to open up, to soften their heart. And it's just interesting that there's that requirement of 3 months of being still. It's amazing because when you're still, you can hear the voice of the Lord. And this family member who has to be still for 3 months is a very busy person, very much a workaholic, works long hours, hard days, never has time to be still, ever. This will now require her to be still. It reminded me of someone else that I know right now who had a major accident about a month ago and is required to be on bed rest for 3 months before this person can go back to work. So there again, that requirement of being still. And as I was thinking about these different people in my life, I was thinking the one thing some of them have in common is they're very stubborn. They're very set in their ways. They're very stubborn, very busy people, and don't like being served, don't like opening up and letting other people in, and don't like a lot of change. They don't like a lot of change. And so maybe this is a way for the Lord to change that, to open up their hearts, to allow other people in, to serve them and love them and turn their hearts back to God. It's a way for them to be still and hear what God wants to say to them. So I found that really interesting that I'm seeing this pattern of people getting these injuries and illnesses and diagnoses and how they have to be still for 3 months. And it makes me wonder what's happening in 3 months, right? Because it's all so sudden, it's all at the same time. It's crazy. Anyways, I just wanted to point that out. I just wanted to share that. Okay, so Sadhu talked about 6 ways that we can prepare. The last part of his message before he left the conference was, I'm not just here to tell you what's coming and what you're not ready for, but I'm going to tell you how you can prepare, what you can actually do. So he said, this is what the Lord told me. These are the 6 things we can do. Number 1, don't fear persecution. There's a lot of scriptures about that, so go study it out. But he said, don't fear persecution. Number 2, pray consistently that your faith becomes strong. Now, this was interesting. He said, pray in the Spirit and in tongues 1 hour a day. This is interesting too because a fellow Latter-day Saint friend of mine who lives in Missouri said that he taught the gospel doctrine class a week ago, and the lesson happened to be about tongues. And he shared with me before some awesome experiences he's had with that. We've had a lot of conversations about that and a lot of cool experiences, but it's something we don't really talk about anymore nowadays in the church. When we speak about tongues, we speak about it as something that you use when you're on your mission, when you don't understand the language, and supernaturally you're given that ability to speak another language for the sake of missionary work. But how prior to that, our ancestors, the early members of the church, spoke in tongues all the time, spoke in the Adamic language, and did it during services at church, and it was just all the time. And then slowly over time, that just went away. And so his lesson was about that, and so he made a handout and he shared it in Sunday school, and he referenced one of my articles, one of my blog posts where I talk about this, and so he sent it to me. So I'll have a link below where you can see that as well. I thought it was really neat, and so I'm going to share his handout on a blog post, so look down below for those links. But it was interesting that he had just talked to me about this, and then here was Sadhu saying it, that you need to pray in the Spirit and in tongues at least 1 hour a day. And I would say, when you think about praying in the Spirit, also think about your prayers truly coming from your spirit, not just it being something up here, something that's repetition, something that's just coming out of your mouth, but something truly coming from within here. It's a powerful feeling when you pray. You feel things happening in here. That would be a big part of praying in your spirit. Okay, number 3, he said, guard your faith from failing. Fill your heart with the word of God, so with scripture, with truth. This should be your food storage, your spiritual food storage. Don't just read the scriptures, meditate day and night on them. Number 4, don't be weighed down by the cares of this world. He said, don't be like Lot's wife. Always remember that God will provide. Number 5, endure persecution patiently. When it starts to happen, don't fight against it. Don't feel like you have to lash out at your persecutors and you have to teach them a lesson or show them. You just let it go. He said, don't fight against it at all. Endure it patiently. And number 6, love not your lives even unto death. And so that's something that the Savior definitely taught us, is don't focus on your physical life here on this earth, but your treasures should be treasures in heaven. Focus on that eternal life. Love that more than your physical life here on this earth. And if you can learn to love not your own life even until death, that you be willing to lay down your life for another, even to lay it down for Jesus Christ, if you can learn that now, you'll be prepared. Okay, he then went on to talk about how it's important to reorganize your prayer life so that it's a consistent pattern. He said, Jesus will give you the grace to bear the persecution if you do this. If you create patterns of prayer daily in your life, Jesus will give you the grace to bear the coming persecutions. Have the mindset to not resist and fight. Counter hatred with love. All right, so real quick, I just want to bring up how the days where I got lax over the last couple of weeks, it's been a busy last couple of weeks. We've gone on some trips. I've been out of town. We had the 4th of July. There's just been so much going on that there were days I got lazy with my prayers and I paid for it. I created breaches for the enemy to come in. So I'm going to share that with you. There was a day we went to the pool and my husband told me that day, he said, oh my goodness, all week, all the news stories have been about this flesh-eating bacteria. Everyone's getting it, and they're getting it from public pools and lakes and just wherever there's water. They're getting these flesh-eating bacterias and they're dying within 48 hours. And he said, I have this fear that if we go to the pool, I'm gonna get it. So I don't even think I'm gonna get in the pool. And he kept saying that over and over, and I said, if you focus on that enough, you're gonna attract that into your life. Well, I got in the pool and I swam with the kids and went to bed that night. And I remember that night, I remember putting lotion on. I mean, I saw every square inch of my legs, nothing wrong, no wounds, no scratches, nothing. I wake up in the morning, I get out of bed and I start to feel this burning, stinging on my leg. And I look down and there's a whole area on my calf, about that big, of raw skin. Like a whole layer of skin has been exposed and it's gone. Like someone just tore off the top couple layers of my skin and it's raw. And I'm thinking, what in the world is this and how did this happen? And so I keep an eye on it, and throughout the day it's getting worse and worse and worse. But we're in a hurry. We're supposed to go out of town that day, so I don't have time to go to the doctor. And I'm thinking, oh dear. So I just started putting silver on it, colloidal silver. Anyways, by the time we got in the car and we're headed down to St. George, I was with my mom and I look at my leg and it looks like I have a crater in my leg. A crater. Like it had got deeper and deeper and it's like everything inside of my leg was exposed. It was about that big. It was terrible. I took pictures, but I'm not gonna show them on here because they're too graphic. The crazy thing is it hardly hurt. And for the way that it looked, you'd think it would hurt much more, but it didn't. And so I started thinking, oh my gosh, I either have a flesh-eating bacteria or I have a staph infection. It seemed to have the symptoms of both. So I did the doctor on demand. I have the app on my phone and I called the doctor, had an appointment while we were driving in the car. I showed him and he said, well, because I can't take a sample, I don't know what it is. But I will say that I am very pleased that you've been putting colloidal silver on it because that will take care of 100% of all bacterias. So good job. He said it looks like it's no longer spreading. He says it looks like your body's trying to deal with it, so just keep doing what you're doing, and if you need to check back, let us know. But I'm not going to prescribe you anything, just keep taking the colloidal silver. So I just kept smothering it with the silver gel and the aloe vera. I put Band-Aids on it. And then the very next day there was a huge blister, just a huge bubble just nasty. My body was clearly trying to take care of it. You could see all the white blood cells doing their job. So I could see, okay, my body's trying to take care of this. I'm just gonna trust. Well, we were going to St. George to swim. So I was gonna be in swimming pools every day. So I really had to patch it up good and waterproof it. And now it's been almost a week later and it's almost gone. It's almost healed. But when I showed that to my husband and I showed it to my mom, they about panicked and said 100% that's a serious staph infection or a flesh-eating bacteria. And I thought, of course, it's because it's all my husband's been talking about lately. So anyways, I had that. And then when we got back from St. George, we had done so much walking that something happened to my foot. And I woke up in the morning and my foot was injured. I couldn't walk for a whole day. I couldn't even limp on it. That's how bad it hurt. So I stayed still for a whole day, which was probably much needed because I used that time to talk to God and read my scriptures and really calm down from all the craziness and busyness. And this is funny because it's all happening on the same leg, my right leg. So I have the cut on my right leg, the injured foot on my right leg, and suddenly I just had this feeling the enemy is trying to keep you from moving forward in righteousness. The right side of the body, righteousness. The enemy is trying to keep you from moving forward. So any way he can breach your shield, he is gonna do it. He's gonna try to get in and interfere. And so that helped me step up my prayers and step up that protection, and things have gotten so much better. Okay, something Sadhu recommended was he said there's a book by Rick Joyner, and he had a revelation about the coming Civil War or future Revolutionary War is what he called it. And there's a book where he talks all about it, and he said it's important that everybody reads this book or is aware of this vision that he had. I haven't read it myself, but just thought I would put that out there. And I do have some links down below to Rick Joyner if you want to check that out. And then something really important that he emphasized, he said to everyone in the room that was listening, everyone at the conference, he said, if you do not teach your children the true word of God without changing it, without trying to sugarcoat it and turn it into fluff, he said if we just give the kids at church coloring books and put videos on and give them toys and snacks and treats and say, here, color this, here's a nice treat, enjoy this treat, watch this movie, and we treat them as children, then we're going to be held accountable for that. But he said they're ready for so much more. He said we need to be teaching them. He said if you do not teach your children, they will become gay. And he said there's a reason for that. He talked about the church of the devil that the scriptures talk about, and he said a big part of that is the worshiping of Baal. And then there was a second god, and the requirements for this worship is homosexuality, and of course sacrificing human life and sacrificing the babies. And he said that's a requirement for this. And so Satan is doing all that he can right now to steal the identities of the children, to take away their true identity and confuse them and give them that same gender attraction. He said that is his agenda, and that's what he's doing right now, full force. And he said if you are not teaching your children and you are not raising them up in truth and righteousness, Satan will get a hold of them and he will go in to change their identity. And this will be a big part of what turns children against their parents and the parents against the children and the brothers and sisters against each other, and everything we've read about in the scriptures where families turn against families is this issue right here. And he said that's why we're seeing such an increase right now. We're seeing so much of this sort of in our face. This just be proud to be gay. It's something to be proud of. The gay pride, celebrate it at work, celebrate it on TV, celebrate it on social media, bring it into your homes. Everyone celebrate it. It's something to be celebrated. It's something to be proud of. He said that's what our children are being indoctrinated with. But he said Satan will take hold of all the children who are vulnerable. He will take hold of their soul. He is stealing souls. All right, so when he said this, he talked about how he was told by the Lord to come to Cincinnati, Ohio, and speak this word to the U.S., to the Christians here in the United States, that this is where he would raise up martyrs. And he said that he had just found out after he committed to coming to Cincinnati, he had just found out that a week prior, he found out that there was a church. In fact, I'll read the article for you right now. All right, so I'll have the links for this down below, but the news article is titled, Drag queen reads during worship service at Cincinnati church celebrates Pride Month. So I've got a picture right here I'm going to show you. It was a Presbyterian church in Cincinnati, Ohio, and to celebrate Pride Month, they invited in a drag queen to dress up in full drag and read a children's book full of indoctrination to the congregation. And it says here that part of what he read in the book said, Harvey dreamed that everyone, even gay people, would have equality. He dreamed that one day people would be able to live and love as they pleased. And it says at one point during the service, a man stood up in the audience and shared his story of coming out of the closet. It said they had gay pride flags cover the halls and rainbow candles all over the church's stage. So as I looked at this image, I was reminded of something I had wanted to share a while ago, and I don't think I did. So as you look at this image, you'll see that the drag queen, there's no whites to his eyes. Everything's black. It's dark, right? Well, I remember I talked about the drag queen story time. I think it's called Drag Queen Story Hour, and a lot of libraries all over the United States in different cities are adopting this. And it's where they have an hour at the library where a drag queen will come in and read these books that are written by people of the gay community that are filled with indoctrination, and they're reading it to the children. And I talked about this when it first started happening way back in one of my videos. But what I noticed when I saw this picture is it reminded me of all those images of those other drag queens reading to the children and how their eyes are black. And I'm going to show you right here some of these images. But when I think of all black eyes, when I think of black eyes, I think of no soul. They're soulless. Their soul has been stolen. It's been taken. It's gone. And so this very much clicked for me when I was listening to Sadhu talk about this. He was saying Satan in this final minute is trying to steal souls, and this is how he's doing it. He's trying to steal your identity and your soul. And that's what I thought of when I looked at all these people who are teaching and indoctrinating the children. There's no light in their eyes. It's gone. And this picture right here looks very demonic. I don't know how this would be comforting and warming and welcoming for small children. But just as with my Halloween video, I'm going to ask the question, why are they targeting the children? Okay, well, as I was looking into all of this, I found a video where it talked about an interview, a recent interview. I forget who it was with, but it was Piers Morgan doing the interview, and he was interviewing someone who was for the traditional Word of God. And he said in the interview, Piers Morgan said, Jesus Christ told you to be tolerant of people as well, and you seem to have failed that test. You are citing the Bible to defend your bigotry. And as you can see in this screenshot, his co-host looks very uncomfortable with this conversation, the way that he's attacking this doctor, and you can tell by her body language she's leaning away from Piers. She's leaning to the other side. So Piers brings on a transgender journalist and brings this person into the conversation, and the journalist says, well, you know, Jesus was pretty awesome and pretty tolerant, and if he were here today, instead of turning water into wine, he'd be turning men into women and women into men. He'd be doing those kinds of miracles, and it would make everyone so happy. I don't know that the man in the interview had a good answer for that, but when I heard that, what came to mind was love and tolerance are two very different things. Jesus did love everyone, even the sinner. He loved everyone, but he did not tolerate sin. Now, people have the free agency to go off and sin in any way they want, as often as they please, but Jesus didn't go out pointing his finger at all the sinners and pointing out their sins. But when they brought the sin into his Father's house, he did not tolerate that one bit. And we know the story in the New Testament of him throwing over the tables of the money changers because they were polluting his Father's house. They were polluting holiness. And that's no different than what we're seeing take place in these churches, in these meeting houses. They're bringing their sin into these places and exposing it and calling it good. They're calling evil good and good evil. And no, Jesus did not tolerate that one bit. In fact, he went into a rage and he threw the tables over and he scourged. He had a whip And he yelled, he raised his voice, he didn't tolerate it, he kicked everyone out. He did not tolerate sin when it was brought into his Father's house. And as I thought about that, I thought we also should not tolerate sin when it's brought into the Lord's house, when it's brought into the Lord's church. We should not be promoting our sins and calling them good and pushing them in everyone's faces and forcing it upon everyone, especially in holy, reverent places of worship. Yes, Jesus loved, he loved everyone, but he also stood up for what was right. So Sadhu went on to talk about some things that we really need to pray for as we step up our prayers. He said, pray that you will not lose your religious liberties as a nation, because when you do, it's all over. While editing this part of the video, my sister happened to send me this article from KSL that says government restrictions on religion are increasing worldwide. So he said, pray, pray, pray that you can keep your religious liberties. Ask for divine intervention. He said, pray that you will escape what's coming. And he reprimanded the crowd, the audience that he was speaking to. He talked about the California earthquake and why God did that. And people started cheering and shouting amen. And he got so upset and said, what's the matter with you? Why would you cheer for destruction to come upon your fellow brothers and sisters? What's the matter with you? That's not right. It should sadden you and make you sick to your stomach and make you so upset to know that judgment is coming upon this nation and upon your brothers and sisters. And instead of cheering and shouting, amen, they deserve it, finally, you should be praying for them and praying for them to be protected, not cheering for their destruction. He said that's wrong. He said, pray you will escape what's coming. Pray that you and your family will be preserved. He said, pray for your children and protect them from the indoctrination of evil. I believe that is what President Nelson was referring to when he recently spoke to the Samoan people and said, protect your children from what's coming. Prepare them and protect them. I believe this is it. He said right now in Sweden, it's mandatory in kindergarten that the children be taught that they are not male or female. They are neither. They are genderless. And that gender is something they can become. It is something they can choose when they're ready to decide. So according to Sadhu, this is something that is already happening right now. He said it won't take long before it spreads here. He said, fast and pray that you will stand strong against the evil days ahead. And then he talked about, he said, when the fifth part of the gospel is preached, that will be your sign that it is the time of the true end. And I thought, what is he talking about, the fifth part of the gospel? And he said, the gospel has 4 parts. In every Christian church, this is what is preached. That Jesus Christ was born, he atoned for our sins, he died for us, and he rose again on the 3rd day. He was resurrected. Those are the 4 parts of the gospel of salvation. But he said there's a 5th part that's not being preached right now. And he said when you start seeing this being preached everywhere, when Christian missionaries start going out and sharing this, it's the 5th part of the gospel, that's how you'll know the time is finally at the end. And he said that 5th part is that Jesus is coming back to judge and reign. He said that you're going to hear that 5th part of the gospel become very important and being shared everywhere. Now, I know in the past our church has taken a stance with same-gender attraction and sort of differentiating it from homosexuality and saying that it's okay to have the same gender attraction. That in itself, of course, is not a sin, but when you act on it, the homosexuality acts are what is sinful. That's kind of been the conversation that we've been having in the church over the last few years. But I feel like with the stance that the church has been taking recently in regards to the Equality Act, they're now drawing a line in the sand and making it very clear there's no more gray. It's black and white. This is what the family is. This is what defines the family. This is God's plan. This is His word. This is truth. This is where you can find eternal happiness. Here's how you can get there. And anything that goes against that is a design from the enemy to pull apart families, to destroy the family, to destroy the plan of God. And that we have to remember that Jesus Christ felt all of our pains. He felt all of our sufferings. He felt all of our sin. And He can take that all away. He can make us whole. So wherever we're feeling not whole, wherever we feel pieces are missing, pieces of our heart, pieces of our soul, things that have been taken from us, that are missing, that have caused us much pain, He can take that pain and he can heal us. He can make us whole. He can make us complete. He can show us our true identity as sons and daughters of God and show us the plan that God has for us. Only He can do that. Only He can transform us and change our hearts. And to say that there's any painful parts of our past and of our lives that Jesus can't heal and He can't change, and it's wrong for us to think that He can, that's a crime. That's sinful, that's illegal to think that. Well, that goes against the whole purpose of the atonement. And I don't think God's going to stand for that one bit. Anyways, this was such a heavy topic to talk about today. It was such a heavy topic, and this is something I don't talk about too much in my videos. I seldom ever bring up homosexuality or share my feelings about it. But with everything that I heard, with the message that Sadhu brought to the United States, to all the Christians here, I couldn't help but feel this is something we need to start talking about. This is something that we can no longer stand by and be silent about, and that we have to really teach our children that you can still love everyone and not tolerate sin. You don't have to be proud of sin. You can draw the line and still love everyone. You don't have to join in to feel like that's how you show your love. And truly, teaching truth and standing up for truth is the best way we can love someone. But anyways, I just wanted to share that today. I just felt that was so important, that that's what we're getting down to right now, that this whole topic of the family and defining the family and the Word of God, and the enemy trying to shut down the Word of God and silence Christians and make it illegal to share the truth and to practice the Word of God in our lives. That is the plan of the enemy, and God's not going to tolerate that very much longer. He's not. We're going to definitely see things speed up. Protect your families, protect your children, teach them the truth. Teach them the truth straight from the scriptures, straight from the mouths of the prophets. And you can't go wrong. Invite the Spirit in your home. Do what you can to increase your prayers, increase your protection for your family, your home, your property. Keep the enemy out. Anyways, I'd love to hear if you have any thoughts or experiences you want to share about this topic. Feel free to reach out to me, message me, email me. I hope you all are having a wonderful day. I hope you have a wonderful week, and I will see you next time.